What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the final episode of the 2023 Halloween special. I know the title of the video just says movie review, but I'm also deciding to count this as the final episode of the 2023 Halloween special. I thought it would be fitting, seeing as the movie we're talking about today came out this weekend, Halloween weekend. Five Nights at Freddy's is the film adaptation of the insanely popular video game series of the same name. The film was directed by Emma Tammy, and it stars Josh Hutcherson as a security guard who takes a job at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, unaware of the dark history of the establishment and the sinister presences within it, which he gradually begins to unveil over the course of 5 terrifying nights. I'm gonna get this out of the way really quick because I know it's gonna be the main burning question that most people who clicked on this video are wondering about me. Am I a fan of the games? Am I aware of the lore? Do I know anything about the lore of the games? Or am I a completely new viewer going into this movie and talking about this movie? I actually am quite a big fan of the games. However, if you've played the games, you know that simply just doing a basic, straightforward playthrough of the games isn't really going to give you much lore to put together. There's a shit ton of lore throughout the games, but if you're literally just playing them just to get a few good jump scares in, you're not really super invested in it, you're gonna miss out on a lot, which is kind of how I played the games, but I also got interested in some of the lore as well, but I really only got whatever I was thinking about the lore from the games themselves. It wasn't until recently when this movie was getting much closer to being released that I decided to watch a shit ton of videos of people explaining their interpretations of the timeline, some things that we know for a fact happened within the timeline of the story. People like Wendigoon and Matt Pat, who actually has a great cameo in this movie. Because going into this movie, I was a casual fan of the series. I've played pretty much all of them, I think. I've played at least the 9 main games within, like, the main series. But I wasn't exactly insanely intelligible about the lore, which is why I was watching, like I said, so many, like, hour, 2 hour, sometimes 3 hour long videos breaking down the entire storyline, and it actually made me a very big fan of the original lore. I got so interested in that story and in certain characters and their backstories, why they did the things they did, and also just the things they did. I genuinely think it's one of the creepiest and best stories ever told in the horror genre, so that got me even more excited to see a film adaptation of it, because obviously I'm a filmmaker, I'm a very passionate film person. I'm gonna go through this review beat by beat. I'm not going to give my thoughts on the big things that you guys are probably wanting me to give my thoughts on. I'm just going to go through bullet by bullet that I took on my notes, and I promise you we will get to some of the bigger controversies within the video. First off, this movie has a great opening scene. I thought it set the tone very well. It was genuinely tense, pretty creepy, and it also established that this is a very well-made film. The camera work, the cinematography, the use of focus and tracking shots, even the actors, everybody's doing a really good job in this film on a technical level. I think that this is a really great movie. I also thought Josh Hutcherson was pretty amazing in this movie. It's not necessarily his most emotionally demanding role, but some of the best performances are given by actors playing characters where you don't necessarily have to have an insane range of emotion. You just have to really embody that character. And in my opinion, Josh Hutcherson really did embody this character. I felt for him in this movie, because one of the most surprising aspects of it is his character's backstory, and I know probably diehard fans of the games are like, yeah, but what about the lore and the things they changed about the lore with the character and the last name stuff? I promise you we're going to get to that. I'm just critiquing this right now as a movie on its own, not as an adaptation of the game series. Judging this movie in its own respects, by its own standards, just as a film, script, writing, character development, things like that, I really felt for his character in this movie. I thought the story that they gave him, certain things that he's dealing with in his life, were really endearing to his character, definitely helped me to care about him, and I think Josh Hutcherson portrayed it pretty well, and he also has a pretty tragic backstory, which actually does make the movie surprisingly emotionally investing. Next thing I want to say is that the way they were able to bring the location of Freddy Fazbear's to life and certain characters from the games to life was incredible, in my opinion. It is so well captured. The scene where Mike, Josh Hutcherson's character, has taken the job and he's heading to the place, getting ready for his first night on the job, the way they build up the tension around this location, the way it's captured, the way it's edited, the music building up, it is very well done. It genuinely gets your adrenaline pumping for for whatever is going to happen over the next hour and a half. This being a horror film, obviously it is going to follow certain classic horror tropes, and some of them work and some of them don't. I do think that there is an overuse of jump scares in this movie. A lot of them are false jump scares, which I hate false jump scares. If you're gonna have a jump scare, at least have the thing doing it be something that is genuinely frightening, which this movie also has a lot of. There are jump scares in this movie that don't work for me, there's jump scares that do work for me. It's kind of 50-50. I would say most of the horror tropes that this movie employs, while we have seen them before in many other horror films, are still done pretty well here, because as I said before, it's a very technically, like on a technology level, very well crafted film with the cinematography, the focus, tracking shots, things like that. And despite the fact that it's PG-13, it actually does have some surprisingly brutal kills, so that was pretty nice to see. There's also some really clever insert shots in here that fans of the games are definitely going to love. I don't consider this a spoiler, because if you don't know anything about the lore, this is going to mean nothing to you, but there is a very, very quick insert shot in the movie of a mirror that is fogged up, and in the top corner, it's a very quick insert shot. It's literally a blink and you'll miss it moment. It's like a half a second long clip, but if you do catch it, you'll see that the words "it's me" have been written in the top right corner of that mirror. If you're a fan of the lore, that's a pretty big Easter egg for you, and I definitely caught on to it and enjoyed the inclusion of it. Also, overall, as a horror film, I did find many sequences in this movie very tense and very suspenseful. It's insanely well crafted, as I've already said a million times. I also really enjoyed the use of music in the film. The use of lighting is really clever as well, and there's one scene in particular that might be my favorite scene in the movie, aside from a few others, where a group of people attempt to break into this establishment, unaware of the horrors that reside within it, and this is also the scene that includes some of the most brutal kills of the film as well. As I said, it's pretty brutal for a PG-13, and there's one kill in the movie for sure that, had it not been done in the way that it was done, might have gotten it an R rating. It was surprisingly brutal, and I know a lot of parents are taking their young children to see this movie because it's a popular video game franchise among kids ages like 12 to 18, like sort of that demographic. I don't set the moral standards for people. I would probably be comfortable bringing my child of maybe 13 or 14 to see this movie, but there's a kill in this movie that I know a lot of young children who are under the age of 12 or 13 going to see this movie are probably going to be pretty fucking traumatized by. Now, something that frustrates people about a lot of horror movies is that the characters are dumb. They hear a strange noise in the darkness, and they for some reason decide to get up and go into the dark room and see what it was, because, you know, that's logical. But sort of a given benefit of this movie and the story it's telling, and a given benefit of the entire premise of Five Nights at Freddy's in general, is that our lead character, that's his job. You know, where in other horror movies we'd be like, why are you wandering around investigating all this weird stuff? You're so stupid, you're gonna die. But this guy's a security guard. If he senses that some messed up shit is going on in this place that he has been tasked with guarding, it's his job to get up and go see what it is. Even if he's scared, it is his job to make sure everything is okay. So that's actually a really clever writing excuse to have him do these things that, if it was another character doing them, we would consider it stupid. But the fact that it's him doing them, it's his job, there is a valid reason for him to be doing it, and a believable one, it instantly takes away that criticism. It eliminates the possibility of calling him a dumbass. So as you've probably picked up on, overall, as a movie, I really did enjoy it. As a film, I haven't even gotten into it, how it works as a Five Nights at Freddy's adaptation yet, but as a film, I felt that it worked pretty well just as its own thing. And overall, I did really enjoy the movie. I think it is a good movie. I think you should go see it. I think that you should go support it. I think there's a lot of things left to be fleshed out and a lot of things left to be answered in future adaptations. But now we're going to get into some of my negatives. Some of them are related to just the film as a film, and some of them also sprout from me being a fan of the lore and being very invested in the lore of the games. First of all, there's some scenes where some characters discover things and see things that are off the walls crazy, that were completely unbeknownst to them, and I found their reactions to be pretty unrealistic. Like, they see some insane shit that should not be possible by any stretch of the imagination, and they're just sort of like, oh my god, Abby, get away from that. That looks dangerous. And I was just like, dude, you should be like, holy shit, what the hell? Like, you should be making like a million phone calls right now being like, you're not gonna believe this. What the fuck is this? How is this happening? Oh my god. So there were certain things like that. The performances were not bad at all, but there were reactions like that. I think most of this is more on the writing that just underwhelmed me. That didn't feel realistic to me. I was like, I feel like if anybody else was seeing that, they would be freaking out. I also think there's some moments of some poorly written and poorly delivered dialogue, and that's why I'm saying the performances are not bad, because some of the dialogue just as written it just doesn't work, and it's, no matter how good of an actor you are, it's still going to sound awkward. I also think that the lore of this movie is extremely underdeveloped and underexplained, because they definitely take some risks here. There's one change in particular from the lore of the game that I know has a lot of people talking right now. They're like, oh my god, how are they going to make this work? And also, why did they even make that choice? In my opinion, it doesn't ruin the film for me. I don't think it is a bad choice. I don't hate the decision to take the story in that direction, but the problem is they didn't really seem to justify the change. Like, it would have been one thing if they really delved into it and explained all the intricacies of it and why that choice is so compelling. If it's equally compelling to the original way that the story was done, or more compelling, because if you're going to adapt beloved source material and you're going to change something about it, that change should either make it better than it was previously, or it should be just as good as it was previously. Sorry, I got a bit of a stutter there. And in my opinion, this change could be just as good as the original, but I just have no way to come to a conclusion on that thought, because they don't really delve into much of it. It's like, it's just revealed that that's a change that they made, and then the movie ends, and it's just sort of like, okay, but what about that? Which is why I have seen a lot of people who don't know anything about the lore of the games or anything like that, who have seen this movie, who have complain that they overcomplicated it towards the end. It's because it's very underdeveloped and underexplained lore. They throw so much at you, and it just makes it very confusing to follow. But there's also an aspect of it that is confusing to follow as a fan of the games, because throughout the movie there's so many things that are dropped and so many things that are hinted at that you're like, oh my god, I can see they're putting the pieces together of the lore, and then it's made very apparent that it's actually not like that, and it's just like, why? I get that some people are very pissed about that choice. I'm not. There's more movies coming. We'll see where they take it. But it just feels odd to me, because I'm not going to spoil anything. The way it was originally in the original lore, in my opinion, is just so much more interesting, and part of the reason why, like, fundamentally, why that story of Five Nights at Freddy's as a whole works so well and why it's so intriguing. So I found it to be a very odd choice that this movie made, and I do think that a lot of it is underdeveloped and underexplained. Now, while I said that it is pretty brutal for a PG-13, I still think that this movie could have benefited massively from an R rating. Again, if you don't know anything about Five Nights at Freddy's, not going to give away anything for you, but the things in this lore that kill people are terrifying. The way in which they kill people is inherently very violent and disturbing. The concept of it is very disturbing as it is, but part of the reason why it's even scarier is because of the way that they kill people. It is so inherently violent and painful and brutal and bloody and gory. So why then would this movie be PG-13? Now, I know why they didn't want to limit their audience. They wanted, you know, the biggest audience possible to make the most profit and whatnot, but I still stand by the fact that this movie absolutely could have benefited from a PG-13 rating. People were saying the same thing about Deadpool. Deadpool had an R rating, and it was insanely profitable. They tried to push to get it to be PG-13 because they thought it would limit their audience if it was R. But then the filmmakers won. They got to rate the movie R, and guess what? Deadpool is one of the most profitable movies of all time. I really don't think it would have limited audiences if this movie was rated R. In fact, I think the critical reception of it would actually be much better. I'm not someone who is of the opinion that a horror movie has to be rated R to be scary. It's just the fact that, given the source material and the way in which people are killed is so inherently violent, it seems like a missed opportunity to make the film adaptation of that PG-13. I also think 15 to 20 minutes of this movie could have been trimmed out. It's an hour and 50 minutes long approximately, and I think that there is a great hour-and-a-half version of this movie somewhere on the cutting room floor. I think if 15 to 20 minutes of it had been cut out, it would have been a little bit better paced, a little bit more watchable in certain scenes, and I think, the critical reception of it would be a lot better. But then again, if they were going to only make it an hour-and-a-half long, there's certain things with the lore that they tried to build that they would definitely have to rewrite. And as a fan of the franchise and of the lore, I do view this movie as a lot of fun. I think it's a really fun adaptation. It's really cool to see these characters that I've been so invested in for so long be brought to life in live action. That's always going to be amazing to see. But also, as a fan, there are certain choices made in the movie that are just weird to me. It's just odd. It's not terrible. It doesn't enrage me, doesn't make me angry, because I'm curious, at least. It definitely invokes me with some curiosity to see where they will take it, but it's just weird to me. And it makes this movie individually as its own movie not always work for me as an adaptation of the games. But overall, I do think as a movie, it's really good. And as an adaptation of Five Nights at Freddy's, I also think it's pretty good. It does a good job at bringing this location and these characters to life. There are a lot of very suspenseful sequences that definitely worked for me. I really like Josh Hutcherson as the lead. I think he gives a great performance. It definitely nails some of the creep factor that is built around certain characters in this movie. They nail a lot of things. The look of all of it, it's really, really well done. It's really just some of the lore changes that are odd to me. And it's not, again, doesn't anger me. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, that's not like the game, that sucks. I firmly believe that an adaptation can absolutely change things if it works to the product's benefit. There's just certain things that are weird. And I wish, I might do a spoiler review where I can talk about it more, but overall, I think the movie works really well as a movie and pretty good as a Five Nights at Freddy's adaptation. I was very entertained by it, and yeah, I definitely suggest that you see it. It was a lot of fun, it's very entertaining at the very least, and it does have a lot of genuinely quality filmmaking and acting and writing to offer. So without further ado, let's go ahead and rate Five Nights at Freddy's. I'm going to give Five Nights at Freddy's a 7 out of 10. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching, and thank you for the amount of support that I've gotten on this 2023 Halloween special. I think this was the perfect way to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much as always for watching. I will see you in the next video, and until then, keep writing, keep shooting, and keep editing.